Welcome to the Trading Bell. We have set up right here to have a conversation with the Group Managing Director. That's Maina Chege of Sasini PLC. Quite an optimistic company looking at how they did over the last year and their full year results. But first, before we get into the conversation, let's take a look at his profile. Maina Chege is the Group Managing Director, Sasini PLC Kenya. Mr. Ochieng is a holder of a Master of Business Administration degree in Strategic Marketing and Management from Oxford Brookes University, England, and a first-class Honours Bachelor of Science degree from Moi University. His career spans over 28 years of experience in international trade, business management and leadership in industry, leading global organizations. He started work from 3M Healthcare as a medical representative in charge of Western Kenya region before joining Wana Lambert in 1997 as a territory manager covering Western Kenya, Eastern Uganda and Northwestern Tanzania regions. In the early millennium, he moved with Pfizer to South Africa as head of marketing for Sub-Saharan African markets. He has held several leadership roles in various organizations, including KWV International as head of global marketing, at Tyco International as marketing and strategy director for Africa and Middle East region, and later as managing director for Tyco Commercial Services for the region, as CEO of GHM South Africa and as MD of SGA Kenya. He's the current chairman of the board of directors of the Global Compact Network Kenya and the auspicious of United Nations Global Compact, which is the world's leading corporate sustainable initiative, as well as a board member of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. He joined Sasini PLC on 1st March 2019. Maina Chege, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's been about 3 years or so since you started on the Trading Bell?
I think it's 4 years. I was last here in... yes, 3 years. It's March 2020, I think.
Wow.
Just as COVID was breaking out. Can you believe that?
Yeah. And first of all, let me start the conversation by congratulating you and your leadership, because we were very keen to follow some of your recent events, and one of it was that you released your 2022 full year results. They're quite impressive. Congratulations on that. We'll be discussing that for now first, but before I get there, let's talk about your company Sasini and the fact that you have been quite innovative in terms of diversifying and all that kind of thing. And I'm sure shareholders will be really willing to hear what's going down there from the CEO side of things. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Innovation is one of our key strategic platforms. When I came in 2019, it was basically a tea and coffee business, if you remember.
Yes.
We are a 71-year-old entity that has, moved ourselves into being the region's biggest agricultural business. And one of the things that has driven that is 4 or 5 years ago when we decided to delve into other crops away from tea and coffee, just to reduce our reliance on those two crops, but also to give us new revenue streams, new profit centers that we can use to then, catapult ourselves into being the continent's biggest agribusiness, which is our goal. That has worked quite well. So we went into avocado and macadamia nuts. We sell 100% of our avocados into Western Europe, Germany, Netherlands, France, and the UK. And we sell almost 90% of our macadamia nuts into North America, in the US market specifically. And then the other 10% goes to Europe as well. On top of tea and coffee that we've traditionally sold from countries in the Far East, Japan and South Korea, to America and Canada on the West, and everything in between, especially Asia. Pakistan is our biggest client and consumer, not just of Sasini tea, but Kenyan tea at large.
Wow. The last time we talked, you were thinking of just getting into that business, and it's good to hear the results of what you're doing there. Let me, first of all, just push you back, because looking at the success, because I call it success because from what you said and the results that you released, seems that your market is stable and all that. But we also seen competitors in your field as well diversify into quite similar products. Is this something that you are concerned about, or the market is wide?
No, the market is wide. There's enough for everybody. And our philosophy is, our strategy drives what we do and how we structure our organization. And so what's critical for us is if we get into a business unit or a business angle, we do it properly. In fact, what then helps the whole sector is if you have many players in it, it helps, that competition helps you to be good. Because we have to remember that we're not doing this just for Sasini, we are doing this for the country as well. We we're a big source of all this agricultural produce that we are engaged in. Kenya is the biggest exporter of black tea.
Yeah.
And we are, I think, in the top 10 in terms of macadamia as well. In fact, I think we are 4th after Australia and South Africa in growing and exporting macadamia. And we've been active in macadamia for a long time. We are now bigger than South Africa in exporting avocados,
wow.
Out of the continent. And so we can't be afraid of competition. In fact, we need more and more farmers because the benefit of the work we do is not just for the corporates and the profits we make, but the general farmer population in the outgrower schemes that we run as well. So competition is good as long as it enhances quality, it enhances the national supply of this produce globally. We are good with it.
Great. So you released your results 2022, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but the question for me is, what are your key highlights? Because from the perspective of what we saw, your shareholders are happy people.
Yeah, I hope they are. I mean, that's the intention, is to give them back because of the investment they put into the organization over the 71 years we've been in existence. So that performance, if I could take you back to the last time we spoke in March 2020, we had just closed our 2019 year. We'd lost close to 400 million after tax.
I know.
And things were looking very gloomy. COVID just hit, and we didn't know it was going to take 2 years. It did. In fact, some of the ill effects of that pandemic are still being felt in business today, in logistics, in some of the markets that we sell our products to. We then set on a new strategic platform to try and reverse the results that I found in the organization. Around 6 key pillars, driving a performance culture, seriously tackling cost containment and wastage, sharpening our commercial aspects of the way we do business, focusing on our talent, the people that work in the organization and what they do for us, because we have excellent people in the business. Being financially focused in giving these good results to make sure that we have enough to pay back to our shareholders. And lastly, doing all those things on a sustainable bedrock of sustainable business under the SDGs. And that strategy was then aimed to deliver for us from that loss of 400 million in 2019, a profit after tax we targeted of 1 billion. We achieved that in 2022, 1.5 years ahead of its target. And so now we are faced with the prospect of, what else do we do? This strategy has achieved this result. We need a new one. And so the board and management are working on one as we speak to then take us to probably double that result that you saw last year. So the key driver of the 1.2 billion we made after tax last year is our tea business was very strong, coming off improvements in quality of the tea we produce, but also driven by reduction in costs because of our mechanization program, which is one of the innovative things we did. We moved from not being mechanized at all in our tea harvesting in 2019 to 100% of our estates being mechanized in harvesting in 2022. And so that gave us a very good, not just efficiency, but cost reduction, and so that contributed to profit as well. Our coffee business was very strong that year. We sold at an average of $6.50 a kilo, some of the highest prices we've seen in the recent past. Our macadamia business finished very strongly, contributing almost 30% of that profit. And that just shows you the potential of new business if you launch it well and you target the market properly and what it can do. And that was then buoyed by our fruit business as well, going to Europe, which is beginning to stabilize now because that's the only perishable line of products that we've got. So it's got more peculiar challenges than the other 3 lines, but we're seeing a lot of stability there. And so we are very happy with the progress we are making in all those areas. We'll continue to look at areas to diversify in to see whether there are other crops we can get into, obviously with large scale and export as the 2 drivers. I'm keen to look into your performance, of course very profitable this time round, and of course new strategy coming up as you've said. And there were certain headwinds. Of course, we came from COVID the last time we talked about. I'm sure now
headwinds keep changing over and over the time. What are the challenges that you're now looking at addressing or even facing currently as we go?
There are very many. First of all, let's go back to COVID. With the effects of COVID is still with us. I think a lot of people...
By the way, I saw numbers being released still.
Yes, and if you look at them keenly, they're not good. I think the only thing that is giving us some reprieve is that a lot of us are vaccinated, and so the effect of that is now lessened. It's become a community disease, and so it's like a common cold, I think. And so, you're seeing less negative effect from it on business. But it did affect business for those 2 years that it was around. In two areas, mainly for us, is the doubling, in some cases tripling of logistic costs, especially to the west coast of the US, where we send our nuts to. Just because there's no availability of containers. A lot of containers are stuck in China because of the pandemic. And so we're starting to see those costs coming down. And we work very strongly in partnership with Maersk as our main shipping line, but with many other shipping lines as well, to manage those costs down. So that's now okay, but still a headwind. And then, as if that was not enough, we had this crisis in Europe with Russia and Ukraine. Those are the two biggest suppliers of components that go into fertilizer manufacture for agriculture. And so we saw when that broke out, a bag of fertilizer, 50 kg bag of fertilizer, moving from 2,500 shillings to 7,500 shillings. And for us, we're a large-scale user of fertilizer, not just for our estates, but for our outgrower programs as well. There was an increase in cost that only now is starting to come down because we're finding alternative, creative ways of managing that. And then this year we are seeing very many other challenges. We've just come off a 6-month drought from October last year to around April this year, which is the worst in 50 years. We've not seen drought that severe since 1972. And we're a rain-fed business, and so when there's no rain, we suffer a lot. We lost almost half of our production in the tea business. Our coffee production has been compromised as well. The avocado season is later than usual and less in volume because of that drought. And so we are going through, despite having very good results last year, a very difficult current year. And then lastly, two things just to mention. One is the collapse of the coffee price, because Brazil, after the effects of COVID, being the world's biggest producer of coffee, has come back with slightly higher volumes than normal. And so that has driven the coffee prices down from $6.50 a kilo last year to just under $4 now. And $4 is really the cost of production of a kilo of coffee in Kenya. And so there's very little money being made there at the moment, and that's a problem. And then for us, the biggest negative effect has been the collapse of the US market in driving consumption of nuts. So that being our main market for macadamia nuts, because of the recession going on there, consumers are using disposable income for other useful expenses, and so snacking has gone down to almost zero, and so we are seeing very little demand, not just for macadamia nuts, but for nuts generally. It will turn, but as long as it is with us, that's a challenge, and those are the headwinds we are facing now.
Wow, quite a mouthful, and I hope that you certainly, you will see ways out of this in terms of your ability to really lead like you did from not making profits to where we are.
Thank you.
Let me move on straight to a bit of what I see in the agricultural sector. Of late, I have seen a lot of innovations popping up. Agri and tech. In fact, we have agri-tech forums.
Yes.
And I'm keen to ask whether these are things that you are really as well taking in your in-tray, so that at least you're not left behind, if I may say that. And what are some of the opportunities that you foresee in embracing these particular innovations that we see?
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Keep your toilets clean.
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach clean less can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
what are some of the opportunities that you foresee in, embracing these particular innovations that we see?
We are at the forefront of driving that. A lot of people look at agriculture and think it's just basic tilling of the land to get produce that you then convert into products to consume. There's a lot of science in there, starting from the soil science, crop science, then the production science that goes into the engineering of producing these crops, and then converting into the art of marketing and selling into the global fields, especially if you're a global player like Sasini is. And so it is not that simple. We run our business based on data. 71 years of collecting this data gives you a plethora of things to consider, a lot of insights to look at. And so with the advancement in technology now, the analysis of this data, the deriving of insights from this data to help you make decisions around where you want that data to help you is what's driving the innovation. And we do some of them. When you do get to the answers, you think, this is really simple. Why did I think of this? I'll give you a couple of examples. In our tea business, we've had a long history of moving our finished product from factory through warehousing in Mombasa and then into the port, into our markets. Every time you handle tea, you reduce its quality, and so what you want to try and do is reduce the handling of that tea. And we worked with a key logistics partner, Maersk, to sort of like bypass the warehousing component in Mombasa and move tea straight from our factories to the port, reducing handling and the time that we were spending in there. And we just looked at data, and data told us we were wasting time by taking this thing to the port. And if we move the processing of the port processes from Mombasa to the factory, we could cut almost a week out. And so we've done that. Another innovative thing that we're doing now is over the years, 7 decades to be exact, we've applied fertilizer in our tea estates by broadcasting, so using your hand to sort of like spread the fertilizer. Effective, but human. And so it's fraught with error and efficiency issues. Now we're using drones. So whereas we used to, in our estates, and they're vast estates, it used to take us about 2.5 months to do the whole estate, it's taking us 11 days now using drones. Again, efficiency and cost reduction there. In our avocado business, just to give you some more examples, we are moving our pack houses closer to the market so that the transport and the perishability that comes out of long distances is then reduced. And we are looking now at putting even more pack houses very close to where the source of the fruit is. And that will help us to improve logistics, work with our partners as well, to move that fruit quicker so that we can get it to the market faster than others. In our macadamia business, we've developed our market very strongly in the US, but the US, like we're seeing this year, cannot be the only market you're exporting nuts to. And so we're exploring Asia, we're exploring Western Europe as well, again using data to see consumption and use for nuts in those markets, and to see how that can be transferred back into commerce for us as a company. So there's data everywhere. You obviously are aware of when we mechanized our tea plucking, how that drove our costs down by improving our efficiency.
You're right.
We'll continue to do that.
This is off the cuff. When I look locally, we are importing food. And I'm talking about just the food crops we're supposed to be having here. And I'm keen to ask you, in terms of diversification, which I appreciate because you are really diversifying, have you thought about even maize itself? And why not? Because we need it here.
There's always that thought, and the challenge is thrown to us a lot by government, by players in some of these food sectors that you're talking about. I think the answer is yes, we've thought about it, and we continue to. Our challenge is we are so driven by export because that's what we've done all along. And so we become experts in production for the export market. But that doesn't mean that we don't really want to supply the local market as well. In fact, when I joined in 2019, we revamped our local supply of tea and coffee in our brands for Sasini Tea and Sasini Coffee in the local market. And now, and we decided to do it differently from the other players by packing the same export quality into those products to sell locally. And so there's a bit of our contribution into that. I think what Kenya needs to do is to identify which foods are needed to alleviate the food crisis that we have, if I could call it a crisis, and then work with companies like Sasini to see how we can help if we have available land or available technology or scale to then answer those local needs that that Kenya has. So we are open to that if they make commercial sense for us.
Okay. And top of mind as well, looking at us, you know, globally, we are looked at as food basket. I mean, in terms of our climate situation and the likes. Of course, there's so many factors that, as you've addressed, are hitting us hard. But what is, do we have a lot of unexplored potential yet, in your opinion? Just looking
I think so. I really think so. And it may not be volumetric, as in how many avocado farmers we have, or how many people are growing a tree or three of macadamia in their backyards. I think where we do have a lot of opportunity is in elevating the quality to be at the global standard. Now, what you want to do is have products that are relevant globally, so that you can access markets without any problem. Remembering that you're always competing other source markets as well. In tea, you're competing with other East African nations, but you're competing with the subcontinent sources of India and Sri Lanka as well. In coffee, Brazil and Vietnam are driving the industry now. In fact, Kenya has become a dwindled source of coffee over the years. We're only producing 40 million kilos of green beans. And 20 years ago, that number was 10 times higher. So, you know, and some of the things for that is how we manage these industries, the quality we generate out of those products, and how we collectively can pull these industries together to work as a unit. Avocado is a good example where, you know, we have very stringent export rules around when you can export, what quality levels you need to reach before you export your fruit. So every year the government puts a ban between November and February to make sure that there are no people exporting immature fruit, because that just goes to mess up brand Kenya in the fruit market. And so if you ask me where the potential, unexplored potential is in the marketing bit of it, in the packaging to be able to access global markets, in the production we are there. And finally, as we come to the tail end of this conversation, you sit at the global UN Global Kenya, it would be interesting to understand what you're doing at the Global Compact, especially with regards to, you know, matter sustainability and all. And I think you've spoken in the conversation how this has impacted your business, and we applaud you for that. But sitting at that particular seat, what's your mandate and what are you seeking to do with corporates that you're getting in, as well as the SMEs that you told me on the sideline are quite a number? Just very quickly, the United Nations Global Compact is the world's leading corporate sustainability program. It was initiated in the year 2000 by the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan to help corporates like Sasini to do business responsibly. It ended up, you know, focusing on 4 key areas: respect for human rights, good labor practice in what we do, protection of the environment, and then anti-corruption as a mantra. In those 4 key areas, you've got 10 principles that drive what we need to do to achieve that. And under those 10 principles are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So those Sustainable Development Goals are just formulae for us to be able to act and change the declining course that the world is taking with the way business is being done now. In fact, the way business was being done 23 years ago. And so when the realization came. So the way the UN Global Compact is then organized is a UN agency that is split into what we call local networks in each of the countries. And Kenya is the strongest local network in Africa in terms of membership, in terms of the work that we do and the impact that we create. We're very proud of that, one of the top 10 in the world. Why? Because we've been very successful in driving corporates to see the need for us to be responsible in the way we run our businesses. But where we've driven more success is with SMEs. So, you know, 60% of our membership in this country is by SMEs. And why do we focus there? Because the influence of what the SMEs do on the ground level in terms of creating jobs, impacting the population with income, but more importantly, impacting either positive or negative effects into the environment is really critical. So if we can get them to see things the way we big corporates do see those things, the effect is multiplied. And so we're very proud of the work we continue to do there.
Sure.
And we seek more and more people to join the Global Compact. We have excellent programs, accelerator programs to help you decide which of the SDGs you want to support, where you can make a big difference, and how you can be a positive impact into the world. Let me end by saying, this generation we belong to is the generation that has completely degraded the environment, made the world a terrible place to live in. We were not born into this. And so I'm in my 50s, and when I think about growing up in the 70s, some of the things we are talking of bringing back were there. That's why we're talking about bringing them back: clean environments, recycling, global temperatures that are stable, and why in the last 3 decades we've done the exact opposite of what we needed to do. And so now we must surely be the generation that tries to reverse that.
Absolutely.
And so the effort right from the Global Compact and the UN side to the government that we work with and private sector in big corporates and SMEs is very important in achieving these goals.
Wow. Your parting shot will be back to the shareholders. You gave them some dividends. I think you mentioned that. And I would like you to as well just highlight, maybe someone has not checked their dividends, but just highlight what you gave them.
We paid our dividends sometime in early June, just because of the process of closing the year and how that takes time. I'm very proud to say in the 4 years I've been there, we paid dividends every year.
Wow.
Because we've been profitable in a growing manner. That 1.2 billion profit after tax we made last year is the highest we've made in our history, in our 70-year history. And our intention is to stay there and keep improving that by looking for better ways of doing business and generating more profit to be able to give back to the shareholders. We're very grateful for the work they do for us, the trust they give us to run this organization. And so our parting shot to them is we'll do our best to keep that flowing.
Your parting shot now, what's your one thing you would advise? There's a leader there sitting there and saying, how did you turn this around? 70 years, highest profit done. What's your one thing that you could advise anybody who's probably where you were when you picked that particular position? I'd like to get that as advice as you end with your promise to shareholders.
I think the biggest challenge for most business leaders is taking over an organization that is in problems. There's no bigger problem than losing your shareholders' money. And so, what do you do when you're in a loss-making scenario, and how do you turn that around of almost 2 billion shift in a 3-4 year period? The biggest opportunity in Sasini wasn't that it lacked strength in achieving results. We just didn't have a strong enough strategic direction to be focused. And so the first thing we did when I got there was to review that and say, where is the organization going and where does it want to go? We had goals of wanting to be the continent's best, but we didn't have plans on how to get those goals. And so we just put those plans, the 6 pillars that I was talking about earlier, and then aligned every leader and everybody in the organization to those 6 pillars. Once you get that alignment, you remove opposition, you remove practice that doesn't drive towards achievement of those, you get results. It's that simple. So you structure the organization around the strategy, you structure your resourcing, your CapEx, your OpEx, everything you do around the strategy, you will achieve it. And so I'm very proud to have led that process, but also to have achieved the result that we did. And now that we're going into the second strategic review, for the next 3 to 5 years, it will be interesting what our goals are in terms of profit and dividend payments going forward for shareholders. I think when we release it, the market will like that.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time, Martin, and congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing. There you have it. That's Martin Ochieng, and he's quite optimistic about what to expect on this particular company. I'll leave you right now to the markets.